On tonight's Cover One Buffalo podcast, we are exclusively talking about 6'7", 340-pound gorgeous humans. But first, armband, handsome Jack.
Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia worldwide with Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL. Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, along with my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, how we doing?
Yo, I am, I apologize to our normal listeners who expect us here, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday nights. I'm flying solo right now at the house with these kids, and I had basketball and Little League and all kinds of stuff going on tonight. Swimming. I'm running a little ragged on the end here, but made it in time. We kicked it back a little bit, so I appreciate everybody that waited around for us on this one tonight. But other than that, man, and I'm not dealing with the storms you're dealing with, but we had some humidity here, and everyone was waiting for this summer weather, and then I got some today, and I want fall weather already again.
So I'll be serious here. I've never had the loud, it sounded like the Amber Alert noise from your phone. I got 2 of those tonight. Everyone around our neighborhood did, for tornado warnings, to the point where we're all looking out the window, be like, do we have to go in the basement, or is that so?
You're not in a good condition to run to the basement.
I'm not, that's not even a joke. The thought genuinely had to go through my head of if there actually is, I got to get everybody else downstairs, and I got to hobble my way to the basement.
Just slide down those stairs head first.
It would not be great. My son has one of those stair slides downstairs going into the basement. I might have to just jump on the stair slide and shoot down.
Yeah.
Nothing good would come of that. So if the power goes out or something,
Destin
my
2.0
apologies.
over here.
It'd be Destin 2.0 here. But yeah, it's hopefully, I think that we actually got an alert that the terrible part passed. I think we might have some wind damage and stuff like that, but the scary part I think is gone. But I have my window open here, which I almost never have open, the blinds up so I can see in case there's something sketchy going on. But anyway, so tonight's show is exclusively for me. Tonight's show is our defensive tackle position preview. Eric and I were joking. He was giving me a hard time that once I was excited about Deone Walker's jersey number being announced, and he was kind of teasing me that I've leaned into the large human bit for so many years in a row that I have to buy a jersey. So I took it a step further, and I legitimately bought a large human Deone Walker jersey. So for anyone watching on YouTube, not listening, over my shoulder is hanging my custom Deone Walker large human jersey. And although he is not the sole subject of tonight's show, there actually is a pretty shocking amount of turnover in this group. So I'll start with, normally I would like to do the 2 Bills defensive tackles in a live, but we already joked about it pre-show. So for any fans who are hoping for a deep, in-depth discussion on Marcus Harris and Casey Rogers, I apologize. It's probably not going to be a ton of Zion Logue either, although I guess he may come up at one point. If you had to guess, Aaron, how many snaps at defensive tackle from last year are we having to replace going into this year? If you had to guess how many guys who played defensive tackle and I'm not adding in any DeWan Smoot or Gregory Rousseau kicking inside snaps, guys who are listed as defensive tackles, how many snaps do you think we're replacing from last year? As a frame of reference, Ed Oliver played 473. DaQuan Jones played 362 on the season. How many do you think we're replacing from last year?
Do you have a total of, that would,
obviously the majority is from Jordan Phillips, Austin
Yeah.
Johnson, and Quentin Jefferson. Those three, there technically were some from Branson Dean, Eli Ankow, and Zion Logue, or
Sure.
Eli Ankow.
I'm trying to
But
think.
just from those 5 guys who were gone.
800-ish?
504. So more snaps gone than any person played. So more snaps to replace than Ed Oliver's full season snap share load. A lot of turnover
sense.
when you go through looking at it, and obviously the new names, Larry Ogunjobi. We'll talk about the suspension a little bit. Both T.J Sanders and Deone Walker are 2nd and 4th round picks. The returners being Ed Oliver, DaQuan Jones, and DeWayne Carter. Just a lot to turn over. Of all those guys, the reason there was so much turnover is how many sacks do you think our total defensive tackle group had last year?
No. With the returning guys?
How many?
Just the defensive tackles?
2024 season defensive tackle sacks. Just for the Bills, guys who were on the team last year. So including, Jordan Phillips, Quentin Jefferson. I think you were going to say it.
8?
It was 7.
Okay.
Everyone altogether was only, and again, we'll talk.
I was thinking between like 5 and 8. Yeah.
Ed Oliver specifically is the best example
for sure.
49 total, pressures with sacks, hits, hurries altogether. 49 was a really good number. At points during the season, he was like top 3, top 4. He ended up like top 8 in the league, but he only finished 3 times. He only got to the quarterback 3 times. So that obviously hurts, but all the rest of the defensive tackles together only had 4.
Yeah.
So certainly a reason that we're seeing this much turnover and this many new names in the room. And now it's, to see what we think we're going to get from it.
Yeah. I even think, obviously sacks get a lot of the attention, and I'm the first one to tell everybody that this game is designed on your quarterback CPA being good and the other ones being poor. And I am a firm believer that interior pressure is more impactful than edge pressure. So I'm not trying to discredit that, but I think another big piece of the turnover in this room was the run game on the interior was also a huge problem for the Bills. I know you've been cooped up like Rapunzel there the last few weeks with your injury. I know you've been doing some rewatching of the Bills season in Discord. And I'm guessing that you've seen the frustration that I had lived through last year of running backs getting to that second level.
James Conner, I've done the first 2 games, and James Conner and Devon Achane, it was terrifying to watch.
And a lot of people got frustrated with like defensive backs not tackling and some of the linebacker play, but guys weren't even getting touched 5 yards, just full head of steam, which makes it harder for those guys. And it continued really on throughout the year. So sacks definitely plays a big role in it, but that run defense and team's ability to just attack the Bills in the middle really showed itself multiple times throughout the season. Wait till you get to the Ravens game.
Oh God. So at least I get Jacksonville tomorrow. So I'm not doing it like every single day, but when I have time, I'm scheduling out some time when I can watch. And then
that Jacksonville one was fun. I was with our good friend William Matar for the Jacksonville game.
You got to go to that one. That was in the suite. I forgot about that.
That was a party at the stadium.
Yeah, so that one's going to be fun. That one's going to be a good time to rewatch. But from a contract standpoint, there's actually not a ton of long-term investment at the position. At defensive tackle, obviously we've got Ed Oliver, who has this season and 2 more years.
Yeah. How do we feel about that contract? Because like a year ago, we were feeling really good of them getting that deal done, and I know a lot of people soured on it this last year because again the sack number wasn't there. But as if you are just listening, as you can see here, my sign today is I am an Ed Oliver truther, so I still think the deal is a good deal.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the way that it's structured, we've been paying him, it's been 17 million, 15 million, 14 million the last 3 years in the cash we've paid him. Obviously we shuffle all kinds of stuff around in, salary cap counts and everything like that. So this year he's an $11 million cap hit. We've paid on average like $15 million a year, which puts him as like the 16th or 17th highest paid defensive tackle. Last year, he was 8th in total pressures. Again, I'd love to get back to the previous year. We do have, we have seen that ceiling. And, when he was coming off the season, that was there, the 49 pressures, but with 9.5 sacks, that feels a lot better.
Yeah.
That feels a lot like you're getting a lot more value. But I'll even say beyond there were a lot more tackles for a loss. There were a lot more overall production from Ed than what we saw this past year. So I think the total of his sacks and hits and hurries and his win rate and his pass rush productivity numbers show that, like, hey, there wasn't some huge drop off, but there was a drop off. He was better in 2023 than he was in 2024. I know he missed 3 games, played through a little bit of injury. So I'm going to chalk up a decent amount of it to that, because I don't think age 26 and 27 was some age related drop off, but he's the one making the big money in that room.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and with the way that contract's set up, you know, there are outs after this year.
Yep.
Like, you could, in theory, it's not great. So he's for sure. And obviously we don't have any intention of cutting a guy like him, but once you get past this season, it's now more in the team's favor of where, like, hey, like, we don't want to eat this, but it would open up like 14 million in cap space if we did a post-June 1st cut and those kind of things. So realistically, it's that 2027 season is the one where he'll be going into his age 30 season. That's the one where, like, hey, are you still producing as a, you know, 15, $18 million guy? And that's when those harder decisions will come. But it's really the only tough decision right now, because obviously DeWayne Carter is in the second year of his 4-year rookie deal. I know you weren't on last week because of some of the technical difficulties, but a little nugget Joe Biscaglia threw out there. I was talking about some of the cut down day trade candidates and some of the guys that we've kind of kicked around. I said, you know, maybe even AJ Epinesa, maybe even, you know, you could see one of the guys in the secondary. So, you know, some of the spots we have a lot of depth. And he said, hey, one name to watch out for, maybe DeWayne Carter. He said he just didn't see a home for him of where it is. And, you know, I think both of us assumed he was going to be a 3 tech. They've talked about him as a 1 tech. Last year on the season, you're talking 8 total pressures, 0 sacks, 3 hits, 5 hurries. Just was not a lot of production overall. You know, was a game day inactive going into the playoffs. Just something that we were excited about getting him as a 3rd round pick, and it ended up being pretty disappointing.
Yeah. I was excited to get him. He flashed a little bit early, and I know he dealt with an injury. And so maybe, you know, he just has to grow as a player, but I saw a lot.
And I will say his snap count, if you look at those first 7 games.
Yeah.
You know, he was consistent. He was playing like 40-50% of snaps in those games, and started 2 of them, the 2 that Ed missed early on. And, you know, I think there was reason to be hopeful. So I guess if you're going to cling to something, it's that, like, hey, maybe he couldn't gut out the injury, then came back and wasn't himself yet. And now we'll see. But
even in those starts, there were some flashes that I think the fan base, and maybe even myself included, looked the other way at some of the not good stuff that was in between the flashes, and that didn't go away as the season went on. So whether he's a trade candidate or not, he's got a lot to prove to try to earn a spot. That's a stacked up room now. And I think I agree with Joe that if there's a guy that you're willing to part for some future pick and just get what you can for, and wash your hands clean of it, this would be probably the move to make along the defensive line from how I look at it right now. Maybe he comes in and totally different attitude, looks like a new player. To your point, the way Bean was speaking about him, maybe it's smoke screen to get other teams excited, but after they didn't go first round, he was like, hey, we're DeWayne Carter be a 1 tech for us. And that was like red flags in my brain at the time. I'm like, no, thank you. Can we trade up now and do something? Because I don't want to go into the season with that. But now that you're looking at this total depth chart and seeing him down at the bottom, it doesn't seem like there's a path for him, in my opinion, at least.
Obviously, like, it's hard to know early on, especially with Larry
Ogunjobi.
We'll talk about him in a second. The fact that he's going to miss the first 6 weeks, maybe there's a game day active spot there, but I think it's most likely that you're talking DaQuan Jones, Ed Oliver, T.J Sanders, and Deone Walker. Like, if Deone Walker's healthy, like if everything's checking out from a back standpoint, I think he would be the backup one tech you would play just from a pure size standpoint. He's not the like stout two gap Ted Washington type guy, but he uses his size better than DeWayne Carter does from that standpoint. I'd even, and this is what I kind of hinted at earlier, I'd even be open to Zion Logue as the backup one tech, maybe before DeWayne Carter. And that's obviously a weird spot to be in, to have that kind of situation. But, Logue 6'6", 320, and, again, I don't think there's going to be a lot of production
on the practice squad too, where if you don't, where like Carter, you're kind of, your hands are tied. You're not going to release him because he's not coming back on the practice squad. Somebody's probably also got a similar draft grade to him where he would go
a third round pick in the second year is going to get claimed by somebody.
It's going to get claimed by somebody. And so, if he kind of ties your hands there, where it's like, if you want to make that roster move, it's got to probably be through a trade, or you're just going to hang on to him as these other guys return from the suspension that they're dealing with, because you want that depth. And there would still be an opportunity to trade him later in the season too. It doesn't have to be a before the season trade for him to be a trade candidate.
Yeah, and I think that there's a scenario where, it's probably not some amazing return, but
you're losing on the deal overall.
You're certainly not going to recoup the other one, but they've got a pretty full allotment of picks next year where you could do like, hey, do you do the Bills 5th and Carter and get a 4th? Do you do something where but it's probably somewhere around like a 5th or a 6th round value that you're hoping you could get something like that. That's probably your best case scenario.
Some fans would tell you that's where Brandon Beane does all of his work.
It does his best work.
Yeah.
Does his best work. So we'll see where some of those pieces go, and what they get. They've got a couple extra, late round picks because of some other trades and things like that. So they could package that, and, but it might be like DeWayne Carter in a 7th for a 5th or something like that. I think that's the kind of trade that you'd be looking at. They don't have a 6th round pick because of the Brandon Codrington deal. So we gave up our 6th for the Jets 7th and Codrington when we did that trade last year. So that takes a little bit out to do this, like a 6th and Carter for a 5th. So it's probably a 7th and a Carter for a 5th, or we just straight up get a 6th, or you could try to do Carter and a 5th for a 4th. I think it's that kind of trade. I don't think we're going to get a huge return, but again, if that's what you can recoup out of this, that's why you restock the room in the way that they did.
Mm-hmm.
Where is your head this year on DaQuan Jones?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting piece to the defensive line. So I was trying to think about this as we were getting ready for this particular show. I remember this time last year being so excited when we did this position preview and thinking that they, bringing back DaQuan Jones was a priority free agent move for me. And so getting him back, the season he and Ed Oliver had before Jones's injury got me really excited. I liked DeWayne Carter. I liked some of the moves they made. I thought the position was finally going to be the impactful position. And so I'm trying to, pump my own brakes a little bit here, Greg, of like, because I feel that same excitement again this year of like, okay, they retooled it again. And they drafted some guys that I really like. And I like what, I like Ogunjobi when he comes back. And I like, I think we could even maybe hybrid talk about Michael Hoy in here a little bit too. When he gets back, there's some opportunity for him to play on the inside. But DaQuan Jones is a big piece of this. And it's, he looked good in the OTAs. He looks like he's in good physical shape. I think he's part of the future when they're running through in the OTA stuff. It looks like he's running with the first team from the videos and things that I've seen. So I think he's going to be a big part of this. And as much as I like T.J. Sanders and I see the potential that people like in a Deone Walker, I don't know that that's day one ready to be the players that I'm going to project them to become. And for a Super Bowl caliber team, I think that they need to probably work their way into being those players. And so that means you're going to still rely on DaQuan Jones to get back to where he was 2 years ago, somewhat closer than we saw last year. And I think we saw some flashes of him getting a little bit better as the year went on, but he was kind of a shell of his former self. And so I don't know if it had to do with needing a little more time to recover from that injury, get back to playing, or if he really has hit that age wall and that what we saw last year is just the player he is. If that's the case, that what we saw from him last year is just where we're at with DaQuan Jones right now, then I really need a T.J. Sanders to kind of jumpstart his career here. I need Deone Walker to be the guy that he was projected to be before the back injury, or I really am going to be itching to see Ogunjobi come back from his suspension to get that extra help on the interior defensive line, because I don't think what we saw from DaQuan Jones last year was good enough. But I don't know that he needs to take some big leap back to where he was to provide a really good, solid person to play next to Ed Oliver. Because like I said, I'm still an Ed Oliver truther. I just need somebody to eat up some of that space next to Ed so that he can continue to eat.
And I think that's, early in the season, out of the first 6 games, we saw games from DaQuan Jones with 74% snaps, 63%, 72%. As we went on the rest of the season, 59, 45, 56, 50, 57, 53, 39, 35, playoffs 36, 49, 57. So in my head, I think it's telling us that that's what the remaining part of DaQuan Jones is going to be, is that he's a 45, 50% snap guy. He's a guy that I think we can still get positive run down production from. He's never been a big pass rush guy. He does okay helping collapse the pocket, helping set up other people, a little bit of cleanup stuff here or there. But that's never really been his MO. Yeah. And I think that's a little bit of what we can still get. And then we don't have a traditional backup one tech behind him. Larry Ogunjobi is a disruptive pass rushing defensive tackle, even though he's 6'3", 305, like he still is a disruptive pass rushing guy. T.J. Sanders, exact same, almost identical, 6'4", 305, that kind of size. Deone Walker is, as you pointed out, he's way more of a Jordan Phillips style player. We're hoping that there's a higher ceiling than Jordan Phillips. We got to remember, Jordan Phillips was a second round pick. Like he was a second round pick because you don't normally see guys who are 6'7", 335. I think Walker. Well. I think Walker said that he at his pro day was 340. Yeah. And a guy that was playing defensive tackle in the SEC at 18 years old, had his huge breakout season at 19 years old, and that after that sophomore season was on. You go back to those like 2 early mock drafts right after the 2024 draft. He was a top 10 pick in most of those. He was, 8th, 10th, 12th in a lot of those, and a like pretty locked in first round pick in most of those places. He gets the back injury. He plays inconsistently his junior year. It drops him down because of the injury risk and the inconsistent play. And he's always had that element of, when you're 6'7", 340 and you've just been bigger than everyone else you've ever gone against your whole life, has he had to work for it? Has he had to build the habits of a pro athlete from a work ethic standpoint and taking care of your body and training and stuff like that? And I don't want to hear about like body fat percentage because, Deion Dawkins is a pretty flabby dude, but he's a phenomenal left tackle. I couldn't possibly care about how you're sculpted. The 2 best defensive tackles we've seen are probably Ted Washington and Pat Williams, who had enormous bellies. Kyle Williams was never like sculpted. Kyle Williams was just thick. Like he was never like some chiseled athlete. Right. So I don't particularly care about that part of it, but you still have to have all of those guys had phenomenal power and incredible explosion for their size, and were able to work themselves into great shape for being that big. Like Pat Williams and Ted Washington also had to be on snap counts and things like that, but they could play that way because they were so impactful and so powerful when they're on the field. That's what we need to see, is to him to recapture some of that.
Yeah. What my concern is, one, like if you look at the R-Lads depth chart, I don't personally agree with this, and maybe Brandon Beane does agree with some of this, of that they have T.J. Sanders as Ed Oliver's backup, and I understand like he can do that, but I actually think T.J. Sanders reminds me a lot of DaQuan Jones when he was playing at his best here in Buffalo as more of a penetrating one tech ability. I think Sanders has some of that ability, so I would slot him early on, especially with Ogunjobi out, because I do think Ogunjobi can do those things too. I think he can play some nose. I would have TJ Sanders rotating. If you're going to have Jones at 36 to 45% of snaps, I would have Sanders behind that. And I would have Deone Walker behind Ed Oliver. And they have Deone Walker as the backup nose tackle. And the only reason I say maybe Deone Walker's back injury really played more into it. And I know that they're kind of bringing him along slowly here this year, but I'm hesitant because I kind of said the same stuff about Spencer Brown, and boy, I've never been more wrong than I was about Spencer Brown.
Yeah.
But with that back injury and tall guys, that's a big concern to me of can they get back to it? And what we saw from him, at least last year with that tape, is he's not going to win with leverage. And I don't know if that back is going to heal enough to where this year he's going to all of a sudden start playing with lower pad level. But that size alone at the NFL level isn't going to win on the interior in run defense if you're playing tall. And that's my concern with him, is getting washed. I think he'll have some of those. Again, I think his low end is a Jordan Phillips ability, where Jordan Phillips always had 3 or 4 plays a game where there was some splash, like he bust into the backfield, make a cool sack, or get in and be disruptive.
The sack in the Chiefs game,
in the Chiefs game,
saved it from being a field goal and kept it where we had a chance to come back and win because we got the ball back with 3, is because Jordan Phillips picked up their guard and sacked Patrick Mahomes with their guard and just threw the guard into Mahomes for the sack.
Yes, but we don't talk about what happened much more often with Jordan Phillips, was being washed out of plays and not being a part of a problem of a play going for a first down or something like that. And a lot of it was leverage based. And so I hope they can get Deone Walker to play a little bit more to his size, which will, I think, require him to play with a little bit lower pad level. I just don't know that that's going to be an overnight project. That's something I think that's going to take him some time to, one, heal the back, 2, get confident that that is healed and he can go out and play, and then 3, learning from the coaching staff how to play at that type of, to your point, he's been able to just go out there and be big and more athletic than everybody. And if you listen to a lot of offensive line guys talk, especially on the interior, they prefer to play against a big guy that's going to stand straight up, where they can get underneath them and kind of control them a little bit and move them around, versus a guy that's going to win the leverage battle. If a guy wins the leverage battle, it's harder to get him out of the way, where you see it a lot right now with Deone Walker. And that would be my concern of him being the backup to DaQuan Jones. Is I think we need somebody that can win with leverage in that role of a backup, especially if Jones is only going to be 40 or sub 40% snaps.
Yeah, I think that, one, I love Ryan Nielsen coming in and what he's done with defensive lines in the places that he's been. And I love that Deone Walker has to go against an Aaron Cromer offensive line every day in practice. Yeah. And I think that's going to be really, really good for him. One thing I think it's important.
Real quick, you mentioned Ryan Nielsen. That's my here to help. So we're talking about a lot of players. I hid it from you here. I hid our William Matar's here to help from you because I wasn't sure if you're going to steal that spot, and you kind of did here. But a lot of this conversation, we are talking about the depth chart. We're talking about the additions, but I think maybe the biggest addition, and this is where I sort of, again, I was pumping my own brakes a little bit today in preparing for this show, and this week in preparing for the show, of, hey, you were really excited last year about this group. Don't fall for the same trap. But then what I can talk myself into is the coaching staff is a big part of this. And I think a big addition of what I'm excited for early on here, and one of some of the small things that you can glean from what the not playing with pads that we've seen, is Ryan Nielsen's hands-on approach to this line. He's had success as a defensive line coach in the past. They're calling him a senior assistant, but everything I've seen is he's really just kind of slotted in as a defensive line coach for the Bills and a senior defensive line coach. And
I think just it was kind of out of respect for Marcus Washington. Like, hey, we're not going to replace you, but we're bringing in somebody else. This is what he does. And if you go back, Cam Jordan credits a great deal of his career to Ryan Nielsen as his coach. So a ton of what he did over his longer stretch, specifically in New Orleans. He was there from 2017 to 2022, and then he did a year in Atlanta and a year in Jacksonville. But he was credited as a huge part of those. Prior to some of the more recent cap-laden seasons, but when they were still going through that great run in New Orleans, a lot of that production was early Trey Hendrickson, Cam Jordan, the guys that he was producing out of those teams.
Yeah, and I think having that senior voice that has experience, that has done defensive coordinator duties in that room also brings some kind of cachet in sort of the way, maybe not in the same way that Aaron Cromer does, but with the offense, but in a similar way where one thing that I know Joe Marino has called for, that I was calling for all last year, was, hey, if your defensive line's not generating pressure on its own, winning one-on-ones, you got to play some games. You got to do some stunts. You got to do some stuff like that. We saw a video, I think it was Josh Reed, put out a video of some of the teaching Ryan Nielsen was doing, hands-on teaching. And a lot of it was teaching these guys how to come down on an offensive lineman and stunt around them. And if the Bills can add some of that with the types of additions that they brought, which I think a lot of the guys, even on the edge, when we get there, thrive in some of those games and stunts and things like that. And you add that, one of the things that I would like to see this defense do is, I don't need them to change philosophically. Like, I still am fine, let's rush 4 or add some simulated pressures, whatever, and disguise on the back end. And I'm cool with the split field coverages that they want to do on the back end. I don't think McDermott's defense is vanilla or soft zone, but I want to see coupling that with some games up front to add a little bit more pressure to the quarterback. If you can get pressure plus disguise coverage and buy yourself seconds, that's how you create chaos in this league. And that's how you lower quarterback EPA. So those are all the things I'm super excited for. And I think Nielsen, which West didn't probably have, is the ability to say, hey, love the defense, love the scheme, but I'm going to kind of control how we game this line before we get to the back end and the coverages.
I love that. Yeah, great here to help. Shout out to our fantastic sponsors over William Matar Law Offices. You know the slogan, hurt in a car, call William Matar, 844-444-4444. That's a great one. I like it.
Thank you.
With those guys, with Sanders and Walker coming in, I think an important part to look at with Deone Walker is, even at his size, he played a really high snap count in his games with Kentucky, like 71 snaps, 74 snaps in the bowl game, 74 snaps, 60, like really high snap counts on his game. So he's like, that gives me some hope that the conditioning piece is there. Yep. The fact that he was able to stay out there for that long, even this year,
being that big
with the back injury. And you're talking about, these are games against like Tennessee and Texas. Yep. And that was always something that stuck out to me with Tavondre Sweat, that I was a big supporter of, is that, like, yeah, he's enormous, but he plays, like, he stays on the field. And he actually played more snaps than Byron Murphy that year, that the two of them were the two defensive tackles. Like, he played a higher snap count percentage than Byron Murphy did. So that's one thing I'm kind of holding on to with Deone Walker, is that he was able to keep himself on the field that much against SEC teams, against Georgia, against, top end teams. That I'm really hopeful that maybe translates a little bit more than, like, his physique doesn't belie that, like, oh, this is some like physical fitness freak, but that also maybe he's not also just showing up and doing it, that he is putting in the work to go that side of it. So we'll hope there. And I know T.J. Sanders is a guy that with his size, I think there is some similarity in build with DaQuan Jones, where there's like that, like, sleek, thick look, like not flabby, not chiseled, but just like like a keg, like just like just a rectangle in all together there. And Sanders did have nice production in college, so like 5 sacks, 10 sacks the last 2 seasons. Had probably a bit more pass rush juice than what we see from DaQuan Jones, but also was an excellent run defender, and a guy that I think we can see some significant support from that end too. So I'm really excited, and a guy that I know it lost some of the buzz immediately, just in the nature of the signing, because what we found out like before the signing was that he was suspended, was Larry Ogunjobi. And he's a guy that has just, he's had 27 sacks in his career, years with 7 sacks and things like that. Really, if you go back to his usage in Cleveland and Cincinnati, in Pittsburgh, they kind of tried to use him as like one of those 3-4 defensive end kind of guys who's supposed to play like 5 technique and 2 gap. And I don't think that was his best utilization. I think he was much better. And you go back to his years in Cleveland and Cincinnati, that's where he has 5.5 sacks, 5.5 sacks, 7 sacks. He has consistently been a disruptive guy.
Mhm.
And I think asking him to like, hey, just come in and go get him. I don't mind it that, if we need a backup to Ogunjobi or a backup to DaQuan Jones, like he's shown capable of playing that style and is the more veteran guy. So I don't hate that. Like if we need to ask him to do that for 5-10 snaps a game, a drive here, a drive there, that it's in his bag. But I'm actually more excited that he's the guy who comes in for DaQuan on 3rd and 8, because I can see him play next to Ed and just go be disruptive, or him and T.J. Sanders, or heck, him and Gregory Rousseau, and you bring Hoyt and Bosa on the outside. Like I like some of the games they can play where he comes in to be disruptive, but I like the idea as the versatility to be able to play some one tech if we need.
Yeah, he fires off the ball, man. When I was watching some of his tape when they signed him as a free agent, and he does a lot of those plays that we talked about. Jordan Phillips, the Kansas City game, that's when Ogunjobi's making a play. It's like busting the line and making a play in the backfield, and not always a tackle, but just slowing down and running back in the backfield. And when they signed him, obviously to your point, a little bit of deflation that there was a suspension along with it, because I do want to see him early, but him and Hoyt, like you're not going to find, I think you made the point early, like they brought in Quentin Jefferson last year. Like you're getting a huge upgrade late in the season, week 6, mid-season here, where you're going to get some
last year was Jordan Phillips and Quentin Jefferson that we brought those guys in mid-season, who brought them both in like within days of each other. And this year instead, it's Larry Ogunjobi and Michael Hoyt. Those are guys better than a trade deadline addition.
Absolutely. And I do think Hoyt is going to have some reps where he kicks inside. That he's a hybrid.
He started at defensive tackle.
Yes.
This last year they used him as like literally like a Swiss Army knife. He played. Yeah. He had like documented snaps at nickel corner. Right. It was super. Like they used him to jam big receivers.
Sure.
It was super. Like they used him all over the place. He's a very versatile guy, and gives me a little bit of Zoe Alexander vibes of like, hey, we have a guy we can use in different spots, but he started as just a straight up defensive tackle. Yeah. Then he moved to like some defensive tackle, some defensive end. Last year he was playing like off ball linebacker and like weird stuff. So I hope they're creative in their usage with him, but he's been a guy who has produced and shown the ability to have good production. And I think is another one that, again, all of the discussion immediately after the signing was on the suspension, not on the player. And he's a guy who, again, not huge production, but 15 sacks the last 3 years, and somebody that I think is going to contribute and be an interesting little movable chess piece.
The Bills targeted him for a reason, to be a meaningful piece of this defense. And you heard the way Sean McVay talked about what he added to their team, and that got me excited enough. Not even just for this year, but the future. I think he's going to be a big piece. I talk about it all the time in the wide receiver room, linebacker room, even defensive backs now. I think more and more football is moving to more positionless stuff. And I think the Bills have actually been on some of the forefront on some of these things. And I know it's frustrated fans and even me at times that they've done that a little bit with the one tech position of having guys like a Jordan Phillips or maybe a Deone Walker play out of position at the one tech. But if Ryan Nielsen this year wants to get real cute and move some guys around, boy, do they have some pieces to do it. We talked about Hoyt. We talked about Ogunjobi being able to kind of having done different things in his career. I think Deone Walker can line up on the outside. Like he had some of those reps in college where he can line up. Play. Groot can line up kind of inside outside. There's a lot of things you can do when we get into the defensive end room. I think that there's even more there that they can kind of do some really unique things and make it more of a matchup situation, especially on third downs versus, hey, we're just going to line up our biggest, fattest guy at one tech and this there and do it in a traditional way. I think they can kind of move a lot of stuff around now if they want to get that way. I'm not projecting that the Bills are going to like rewrite how defensive line plays, but they have a lot of pieces that are intriguing and have had experience moving around a little bit. And I think that is the future to getting disruptive on some of what these offensive lines in the NFL are trying to do.
Yeah, and I think it's about having that tool in your tool belt. Have that option that you can mix things up, that it doesn't always have to be. Again, so much of the NFL nowadays is you need to get pressure with only sending 4, but you need to make sure they don't know which 4 are coming.
Yeah.
And I think having the versatility of guys lining up in different spots that can do different things, we have the option that, hey, even if you know which 4 are coming, these guys are pretty good. And now you have some athletes that can drop into space, let you blitz from a different area, trick the defense or trick the offense, trick the offensive line, trick the quarterback, not knowing how to set the protection and being able to create some true disruption with the options that are here. So really hopeful. I love the Ryan Nielsen addition. I love the fact that we changed over so many new guys, 3 new defensive tackles coming into this space, replacing those 500 snaps that we had last year. I think that, we'll see some of these guys step into there. We'll see what happens with the DeWayne Carter, how that one approaches it. I would love to be wrong and have him have a big step forward here, but I also think he's a name to watch for with cut down day and trade standpoint. I think him and Epinesa are the 2 that really stand out to me from that group. But this is an area that I think it's okay for fans to be excited about. I think this is exciting, and we'll kind of see where it goes from there.
Yeah. One comment here I want to bring up. Noah Sheldon saying T.J. Sanders' size still worries me. I'm not worried at all about his size. He's like the same size as DaQuan Jones. I know Jones is listed at like 315, but I don't think he played.
He plays at 305. TJ Sanders was 305 at his pro day.
Yeah. And if they want to throw 10 pounds on TJ Sanders, they could do that in a couple weeks in Buffalo. Like that he's got the frame to just throw some weight on. So yeah, no, I have no concerns about his size. And I think his play matches his size pretty well. So I don't have concerns. I think some of that stuff's a little overrated.
People got to chill out on what people weigh in at the combine. They're there to do testing on quickness and sprinting. Right. Of course, they're going to be drop a little bit lighter and drop a little bit of weight to do that. He said he played at 300 pounds. He was 305 at the pro day. Yeah. Like he's a normal defensive tackle size. Like he's exactly what you want a defensive tackle.
He's still filling into his body. He's a kid still. So yeah, no, I'm not. None of those guys concern me. And now they're in a pro facility with pro nutritionists and a pro Ed
Oliver's been our best defensive tackle. He legit plays at 285. Yeah. Like Ed probably Kyle had Williams games where he was at like 280. Yeah, Kyle Williams was like 285.
Yeah. Like so the size doesn't concern me. I think for me, I don't know if it'll.
I like having the mix. I like adding a guy who's also 345.
You do like large humans.
I do like large humans. So I like adding the mix, but like it's not the different. I think the difference 295 and 305 is nothing. Like that's not a thing in those guys. That's the normal range of where they play.
Yeah, they fluctuate throughout the season. Yeah, and I mean maybe it won't translate to the next level immediately, but I did see enough, in my opinion, of his tape that I think he'll play fine and be able to anchor in the NFL.
Yeah. Right. And again, we'll watch. We'll see how they utilize him, what they do. We've had some in the past where I've been concerned about how they have asked guys to, manage their body or change body types and things like that. And that we haven't heard anything of that with TJ Sanders.
You're going to be livid if they're like, hey, Walker, we're going to need you to drop 30 pounds. I'm
going to be so mad. I will lose my mind. I will say impolite things.
Years. Yeah.
Anything else for the people before we wrap up here?
No, man, that's it. I'm tired. Like I said at the beginning,
it's been a long day.
It's been a long day. My kids are off school tomorrow too, so it's going to be a long day again tomorrow. So yeah, no, I'm going to go get some sleep and dream about some large humans and Ryan Nielsen bringing guys all over the line and getting some pressure on quarterbacks.
Good for you. I wish you all the best tomorrow. Yeah. I'm going to hobble my way back over here as well.
Yeah, cool, man.
All right, guys. Appreciate everybody. Big thanks to all of our folks here. If you want to come join us in the Cover One Discord, I will continue rewatching games and talking about them there as I work my way through my quarantine here as I am rehabbing my ankle surgery. Thank you for the kind thoughts from everybody. It is going well. I am encouraged by the progress, but it still sucks being trapped up here. I'm tired of being stuck up here in my bell tower. But on behalf of everybody here at Cover One, we appreciate you guys, our fantastic producer, Chris Kepner, and my wonderful co-host, Aaron Quinn. I'm Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.